Welcome back, my friends. I'm your host, Kurt Elster. This would work better if I had the sound up. Welcome back, my friends. I'm your host, Kurt Elster.
Jack Nasty.
And today on the Unofficial Shopify podcast, I have a bit of trivia for you. Did you know in 2021, vinyl outsold CDs, as in vinyl records outsold compact discs? I heard that, shocked me at first, and then I realized, wait a second, who's buying CDs? But I was in Target over the weekend, and they have an entire section devoted to vinyl. Meanwhile, Best Buy has announced they're not even going to sell Blu-rays anymore starting next year. But Target has a dedicated vinyl section, and these are new records. And we bought a turntable for the first time this year, and I've been picking up some beat-up records at flea markets and enjoying it. And so I have now set for us the perfect backdrop for our guest today, Mark Poppen, who's the proprietor of a Shopify store called Funky Moose Records. Mark, welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
I'm happy to have you here because you're someone in the vinyl business. Have you felt this impact of the vinyl revival?
Yeah, I've actually been riding that wave. So the vinyl revival kind of started in 2014-15, right around the time I started the store. And the store has been growing ever since with the whole revival. So yeah, definitely.
So when did you? All right, so vinyl revival starts 2014, and you've been at this how many years?
In 2015, I started the store.
2015, you started. Okay, and what was the thing? Why start a vinyl record store? Especially now people understand that there's a real collector's market here. In the past, though, 7, 8 years ago, not so much.
No. It all started from, so my background is in web design and digital marketing, and back home in Holland where I grew up, I was always hanging around radio studios, and the studio I was kind of growing up in, so to speak, because my dad hosted a show there, was a massive room of vinyl records. So I kind of grew up with, knowing vinyl records. My dad had a record collection. And then when in 2008, I moved here with my wife to Canada, we sold everything, brought 4 suitcases here, and started from scratch, basically. And come 2013, 14, we were like, maybe we should, get a turntable. Could be fun. And I found one on a secondhand store for $5 because the lady at the counter didn't know what it was and didn't know how much it was worth. So bought it with a box of records. And then for the longest time, that box of records, half of them sat beside my desk. And I was like, what am I going to do with these? And then switching over to my web designer mindset, it was like, wait a minute, I always wanted to sell something online. Why don't I sell these? So right before that, I had a mediocre experience with one of the big box retailers that sold vinyl records, and I was like, I can probably do this better. And so my first Google search was Record Distributor Canada. The first one that popped up, I looked up the phone number, gave him a call, and the rep on the other end was very inviting. He was like, "Oh, you're running a business?" I'm like, yeah, it's a web design business, but he's like, don't worry about it. You have a business number. I can sign you up. I'm like, oh, okay. So he signs me up, and I was like, so there's no minimum order quantities. How does this work? He's like, no, just keep in mind that we ship through FedEx, and if you order one record, you'll probably pay as much in shipping as for the record. So you might want to consider buying in bulk. Okay, sure. So that phone call ended. So I hang up the phone. I was like, that means I have to build a website now. So built the website, and all that's going through my head is like, well, this could be cool if I get maybe a handful of orders or a handful of records. If I sell a handful of records in a month, I'd be happy, scratch my itch of the e-commerce thing, and I kind of can keep up with my e-commerce skills. And So yeah, the first order rolls in after 8 days for 4 records. It's like, oh, that is already more than I anticipated. And the day after, another order comes in. It's like, uh, am I onto something here? So I placed an order with my supplier. The guy was very helpful. He was like, okay, you need Led Zeppelin, you need Pink Floyd, you need, these records you need to have in your store. So my first order was a couple of $100 to fulfill the first few orders, and then it just snowballed from there.
And so what? All right, so you're a web designer. You have a collection of vinyl, and you just on a whim thought, I bet I could sell these online, and it's easy to justify because you're like, well, I'm gaining valuable skills here related to my current career.
Yep.
And in doing so, you were lucky you were able to find a distributor who was willing to be helpful because they have their own motive, right? They want you to be successful. They want to sell more records.
Mhm.
And in doing that, what was that initial catalog like?
So after I started the build of the website, very basic. It was Shopify from the get go, and I grabbed a free theme from somewhere. I don't even remember. I think it was from the Shopify theme store. Maybe it was the bit. I don't even remember.
It's probably
it was so long ago.
The theme it came with.
Probably, yeah. And then I was like, I don't know what to add to these. To like which records do I add? So that's where my sales rep came in handy, and he was like, okay, this is a list of, let's say, the top 100 records that we are selling, so it's likely that you are going to be selling these too. So I just started adding, and once I had that top 100 added, I just started going through the catalog myself, and I was like, okay, I'm a Queen fan, I want Queen records on here. And then you hear a song on the radio, and it's like, oh, I wonder if they have vinyl. You search it up in the database, and yep, they do. So add all of those records. That was a chore and a half, but it was expanding, broadening my horizons too when it came to music. And as a music lover, that's the most important thing, or the most exciting thing, I should say. When you go through the new releases list of your distributor and you're like, oh, so and so has a new record. Great. I'm going to add it to the website and see if it sells. And lo and behold, usually it does. So, yeah, it was started on a whim, and it was a pretty kind of surreal experience where it was like everything just came together and without a plan. To this day, I really don't have a plan. I don't know what I'm doing.
So you just jumped into it. Like what's the current issue? I have some records to sell. So the solution is start a store. Hey, I need more records. Find a distributor. Found one. Started moving the records. Now, hey, we have to expand the catalog. So it was a mix of what you were interested in, what was available, and what was recommended to you.
Yeah, and it's also because I live in a rural community, so the closest record store to me is an hour away.
Okay.
And here I'm thinking, well, if I'm in that boat, Canada is pretty big. I'm sure there are more people that, because record stores, how many record stores were there in 2014? So I figured, well, if I have this problem, I'm sure other record collectors have the same issue. And with the like I said, mediocre experience that I had with a big box retailer, and my research on, okay, how much competition would I have? At that time, there were maybe a handful of indie record stores that sold online. So I kind of put two and two together. It was like, I can probably do this. I can probably make this work. But I never thought that this would become my business, my actual business.
And you've got, all right, so your background was web design, but the theme that you're using, appears to be just like bone standard Dawn, the default. You didn't go design crazy, a thing no. I have to respect you for.
Actually, the theme I'm using right now is a theme by Save the Milk. It's a premium theme, but it's very similar to Dawn. Yep.
It has all right. So I mistook it. It has a Dawn look.
Yes, it does, but it has a few features Dawn doesn't. So this was actually the theme that I added in 2016. So when I started seeing that the store was growing, I was like, okay, this free theme, maybe I should upgrade. Get some premium support maybe. And then I found this theme that kind of matched what I was looking for more than what the standard theme at that time for Shopify was. So I
And
bought that
why,
for, yeah.
as a web designer,
Mhm.
you have an interesting background that like a lot of the people, the entrepreneurs I've talked to, don't. What made you go with Shopify 8 years ago?
So in the past, I've set up e-commerce stores for clients, and a lot of them were through an open source platform, and I don't remember what the name is, but it's an open source thing, and the updates were very hacky. You had to download the package, you had to overwrite through FTP, and it was like a nightmare.
Self-hosted, you're responsible for everything.
Exactly, yeah. And I just didn't want to take that responsibility. It didn't make sense for me to take all that responsibility. And that's also when, I've been with Shopify for, well, since the inception, basically. So my clients always had the option: do you want Shopify or do you want open source? Open source would be cheaper, but the maintenance will be higher. And of course, when you mention cheaper, people go for cheaper. So Shopify was always an option. I've been a Shopify partner since, I want to say, 2012. Whenever the partnership program came in, I was one of the early, not as early as you, but I was one of the early partners. Um, and ever since that experience, there was one somewhat big client that went with the open source route, and I had to weekly update the software through FTP. It was like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. It's Shopify from now on. So Shopify was my own first choice when I started the store in 2015.
And do you still do web design? Do you offer web design services?
I do. It's more pushing towards digital marketing. So I don't necessarily go build and design from scratch. But it is like, I can set up a store, I can set up a website, but it's not completely 100% from scratch. So I do WordPress. I use Divi to create the layouts of the websites. But I've transitioned more from the web design part to the marketing around. It's more like a whole big package than here's a website, good luck with it.
And then so I would assume that your experience on both sides helps advance the other. Something works in Funky Moose, maybe this works for client work, and vice versa.
Yep, exactly. So part of my digital marketing offering is I'm now a Shopify coach. And it's exactly that. The things I learned through Funky Moose, if something works, great. I make note of it and I tell my clients, like, I tried this and it works. You might want to try this too. Of course, that doesn't go for every client because
right,
maybe it's very specific to what I'm trying to do. But and then the other way around too, where a client tries something and tells me about it, I'm like, oh, I should probably put that on my store. That's a good idea.
Well, and then, when you're able to put it to work yourself and see how it works and have that personal experience, that's very valuable. And so what types of marketing have worked best for Funky Moose?
So of course I started with no plan, no budget, no nothing. So everything had to start organically. Luckily, the vinyl community is very, very small. A lot of people know each other. It's also pretty friendly. Even record stores don't see each other as competition much. And I'm still an advocate for the local record stores. Go support your local stores if you can. Like if you're in a city and you have a store around the corner, go check them out. If you're not in a city and you have to drive for an hour, maybe check out Funky Moose. But so the whole community building, that's where it all started. I also started a Facebook group, Canadian record collectors. But before that, I was just part of smaller groups here and there, and I was just mentioning like I'm going to start an online store. Here's my landing page. If you sign up for the email newsletter, I'll let you know when we launch. And that's how I got the first few sales. And then from there, my SEO background came into play. Where to this day, if you search online record store Canada, Funky Moose is, if it's not the first one, it's the second or third. So it's doing very well there, and it's.
I just tried it. I searched online record store Canada, and sure enough, you're number 2.
There you go. Yeah, and that's where most of the traffic comes from. That's where most sales come from to this day. And then the second one was, when the ads, or when the sales started rolling in, I had some money to spend. Like, okay, now we need to do some ads. So I started with Google Ads right out of the gate. Sorry. And the reason for that is that, Facebook ads and Google ads are similar in price-ish. But Google ads have more intent. If someone is looking for Vinyl Records Canada, they're looking for vinyl records. So I want those people on my site. And if I spend the same amount of money on targeting record collectors on Facebook, well, they probably already have a bunch of records and they're just showing off what they already have. And I found that Facebook ads, they do return customers, but not as many as Google ads would do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So Google Shopping, high intent.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook ads, we're preaching to the choir, is what it sounds like.
Yep, that's kind of the idea I got from the ads I've ran, and there are a lot of comments on Facebook ads that why are your records so expensive? I'm like, compared to what? And then they start comparing. It's like, oh, it's actually only $1 more. Well, whatever then. It's like, but yeah, a lot of discussion going on those ads, which is valuable because you're showing that you're actually involved. And it's harder to measure because, if somebody sees an ad and then reads through the comments, leaves it alone, comes back to the comment, maybe leaves a comment, and then places an order, then that sale isn't attributed to that Facebook ad anymore. But it's still valuable, and I do think Facebook does convert still, but I'm spending less money on Facebook than I am on Google right now.
So then, with Facebook ads, you said, hey, I'm going to keep spending that money because I'm seeing the engagement and because I think there are unattributed conversions happening. People who bought because they had that conversation with you in the ad, but that did not actually get attributed as a conversion in Facebook.
Yep. So
how are you deciding where to put your marketing dollars then?
This might sound stupid because we measure everything as digital marketers, right? But a lot of gut feeling. Actually, Thomas from Store Hero, he was a guest on your show.
Thomas Gleason. Yeah.
I want to say 2 months ago, something like that. I've had a chat with him, and now I'm using Store Hero, and you can see that the ROAS on Google ads is higher than it is on Facebook ads. So, and I tried the whole organic thing on TikTok, but TikTok is not where my audience is. Instagram, the same thing. yes, there are people out there. There are record collectors on Instagram, but the majority of sales come through Google Ads. So why wouldn't I spend more on Google Ads to get more of those people converted into sales?
The I mean, you're right. Why wouldn't you? the
I'd like your thoughts, because I mean, you do this too. So
that's the danger of getting locked into like that idea of we do everything data driven. I hear that a lot. Oh, we make data driven decisions. And whether or not that's true seems to be unrelated to what someone will tell you. And but when you get trapped into that, oftentimes you end up overlooking, passing on otherwise good ideas because you just didn't have a way to quantify and measure it. And what I'm hearing from you is like, hey, sometimes it could be subjective, sometimes it could be a hunch. And as long as you have that overall profit margin, as long as the business is healthy, if that's how we want to spend our marketing budget, that's fine.
Yep.
That's like when you start moving into those bigger, more holistic KPIs like marketing efficiency ratio, or using a tool like Thomas's, like Store Hero, where we're figuring out what is contribution margin on each sale, on each product.
Yep.
Now, like we could be much less obsessed with we have to see the positive ROAS on this specific ad, where we're getting really granular. And it's it depends on the business and the approach. And here you're just going at it a little differently.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird, but but it's also the reason we're doing a lot in the community. So, for example, Joel and I, so we host a podcast where we hang out with musicians on a weekly basis, because that's our
cool.
passion. Yeah, and we've been doing that at our local restaurant here, because apparently musicians are okay to drive to be on a podcast. So we've had musicians here at
they're used to going to
restaurant.
Studios, I suppose.
Well, I guess, yeah, used to studios and used to gigs, and if you have to go, I don't know, drive 2 hours for a gig, what's an hour for a podcast that lives on YouTube forever, So Joel and I started the podcast in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, and we haven't missed a week since. We're 2023, and because we're getting a lot of local artists, we're starting to get a lot of name recognition here in the province, and through that, there's a local musician. He's pretty popular. I don't know. Everybody look up the Steadies and Earl Pereira. He's the lead singer there. We've had him on the show twice, and he mentioned that the second time, apparently in both episodes, we mentioned that we, in the future maybe wanted to organize a music festival. So Earl reached out to us after the second time we recorded with him, and he's like, so this music festival, when is that happening? And Joel and I were like, I don't know. I don't know. And he says, okay, August 7th, the Steadies are available. Do you want to book us for a headliner? And we were like, maybe. So he called us on a Friday. So Joel and I put our heads together. Over the weekend, we booked three other artists, booked a venue here in town, and called Earl back on Monday saying that, let's do this. And knowing full well that these bands needed to be paid. And if it went sideways and nobody showed up, I had to pay for it. But, it's kind of one of those gambles that put our name on the map, because now this is year 3 of Moosefest, our annual music festival, and we're already booking for 2024. So we're if you're talking about social proof, this is our social proof. We actually do something in the community, and in turn, because we got noticed as Moosefest and Funky Moose Records, we are now also hosting an open stage, an open mic in the city, where we were invited. Like, you can have the stage. It's been the longest running open stage in the city. The previous host got a new job or something. She had to bow out, and then we approached the owner of the venue, saying that, could this be beneficial? And he's like, "Yep, it's all yours. You can advertise the hell out of whatever you're doing. Cross pollinate the artists you get on stage here. You might be able to book for your music festival, and the guys you have on your podcast, you might want to bring them in to come to the open stage." So it was like an organic, holistic type of thing. And
So when
again,
people say, "Oh, community involvement, build a community." That's helped us grow our business, and I believe it because I've done it too. I've seen it.
Yep.
You have taken that so much further, because same deal. It's like, all right, you started before the site has launched, day zero. Hey, I've got a newsletter. You can sign up for this, be informed, because I'm setting up this thing. It's a record store, and you're involved in those local communities via Facebook groups. All right, got it. That's step one. Step two, then the store launches. You create a Facebook group, and you've got SEO efforts, the traditional digital marketing stuff going. You've got SEO efforts. You have Facebook ads. We have Google Shopping. All right, now we add a podcast into the mix, and you did the important part that everybody misses. You have never failed to publish an episode. That consistency is so critical. I am so proud of our show for having achieved that. And I know when I talk to the other successful podcast hosts, that is the trick. That is the magic that everybody's missing, is you just have to keep doing it. And inevitably, you'll get better at it, and you'll gain an audience. Next step. Now, here's where things are getting really impressive. You're like, all right, we're going to host a concert. We're going to host a music festival, Moose Fest. Oh, all right, brilliant. And then all right, we got a open mic we're going with as well. And you're like, you know what? The water's fine. Come on in. We're also going to actively support other local record shops. It's quite incredible. Like, it becomes immediately believable that you are a pillar in your local community around music and this one niche. And they all overlap. They all go together. And it seems like a ton of fun.
Yeah. That's what Joel and I kept saying too. As soon as the fun gets sucked out of it, we pull the plug. And that's what I've been saying with the store from day one too. Like, if this becomes like a chore, and I have a day where of course I have the days where I don't want to do it anymore, but if it becomes like, okay, am I considering keeping this going? If I start to consider that, I'm pulling the plug. But so far, like, everything we do, we're just doing it because we're having fun, and it makes money every once in a while. So that's.
I had tweeted recently. I said I just want to make cool stuff with my friends, and if I make money about it, I'm not mad.
Yeah,
and it sounds like that's the approach here.
Yeah, for sure. It's and we show up at music events. So the open stage that we host, a lot of smaller indie bands show up, and they kind of announce like, oh, this Saturday we have a show at so and so, and we show up. We're kind of, Joel and I are kind of becoming, and this sounds arrogant maybe, but we're becoming the face of the music industry, and I mean that in the most humble way possible. Like, people are starting to recognize us. When we walk in, we're the Funky Moose guys. It's and people want to talk to us. Actually, people are reaching out to us. Hey, can you record our album with us? And we're like, we don't even know how to do that.
They just assume you do. That's how well they're like, well, clearly they must know everything.
Yeah, you guys do something in the music industry. I'm sure you can help me. Which, side story, you might cut this out, maybe not. But there's a musician that we had on the podcast first. Then he came to Open Stage, and Joel and I both agreed, like, this guy needs to go into the studio and release this song. And when he came to the open stage, we immediately talked to him and said, luckily, the studio owner was also at the open stage at that same night. So we introduced the two and said, meet each other. Um, you guys need to record together. And then the artist was like, well, I don't have any money. And Joel and I look at each other. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. So now on September 22nd, this song was released, and it went to Canadian and American radio. It's on Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music, wherever you look for it, and it's going well. Joel and I are very proud of, the artist making, putting in the work to make this song work, and pretty proud of ourselves that we actually found this guy.
That is just an incredible commitment to community involvement. Why is that strong community so vital for Funky Moose?
Well, first of all, like I said, it's fun. So when Joel and I do things, we often have a 5-minute conversation. It's a lot of gut feeling that we go on. And the community involvement, when we do the open stage, it's always presented by Funky Moose Records. It's always presented by Moosefest. And that name recognition, artists are coming, like I said, artists are coming to us now, asking, like, I want my album on vinyl. Can you help? Yes, we can. We have the connections. We can put you in touch with pressing plants. We went through the process ourselves with one of our friends who wanted their EP on vinyl. So we helped them through the process. So we went through the process, so we kind of know what we're not experts because we're not on the vinyl production side, but we've been through the process, so we know what we're talking about. We know what to expect. And that's one of the reasons people are coming to us. And it's, Funky Moose Records is vinyl. So people are also buying because they see the name Funky Moose Records in the city.
And so that, by keeping it local, you've really made it much, by keeping it local, then having this genuine involvement and investing in that local music scene really has been quite incredible for growing the brand, driving brand awareness, and then growing the business and making sales. Yep. So hindsight being 2020, you're a coach. Let's imagine we're speaking to the folks who are really early in their journey, because this is the hardest part, I think. Not coming up with the idea, not building the store. It's just going from 1 to 100 orders.
Yep.
How do you think you secured your first 100 orders?
So the first, I would say 10 to 25 was from that email list that it built. It was the little bit of community involvement that I had in the Facebook groups, where I started mentioning it. Like, okay, there's a new online record store. If you're in a remote community or you're not close to a record store, you don't want to go out, we have a solution. That was step one. And then from 25 to 75 would be the SEO efforts, because from 0 to 25, that's about the time it took for Google to pick up all the products that we had on the site. And in that time period, also keep adding records to the website. And then, so that's the SEO efforts. And then from 75 to 100 would be the ads. And then from there, just snowballing.
Now, obviously, like you can't give away your SEO strategy, but high level, what are the steps? What are the pieces that go into that? It's like, is a lot of blog content, backlink building? Like, what's the approach?
So backlink building is one of those phrases that I'm like indifferent to. Because yes, it's good to have backlinks from other sites, but I feel like you shouldn't be forcing those.
Right. Yeah, you get those
If
like spam requests.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
turns into
if
spam.
yeah, if you write quality content, other websites will link to yours. So that's kind of what we started with. What I started with. I like writing. Although
That's a superpower. The folks who like writing and have a website, like
yeah,
immediately your life just got easier.
yeah, and with ChatGPT coming into play, it's a game changer. I'm not saying tell tell ChatGPT to create a blog post and copy paste, but it is a very helpful tool where you tell it to create a blog post and then you fact check everything because ChatGPT doesn't always get it right. Um, Give it your own spin and then post it. So for the longest time in the past 2 years, I hired a blog writer, and she wrote one blog post per month, and it was a minimum of 1,000 words, and that gained a lot of traction. So there was traffic to the site. They didn't convert necessarily directly into sales, but because those people are on the site, now you can retarget them. So obviously, if someone is on the site reading an article about storage solutions for your vinyl records, they're collecting records. So when you retarget them with a either a Facebook or a Google ad, it's likely that they'll come back at some point in time. So yeah,
Clever.
that's one of the strategies, and then also the product titles are crucial. So what we've done, we built a. This is actually something in the last year. We built an app that synchronizes all inventory from our supplier with our website, which means if our supplier has an album in stock, it'll appear on our website.
Oh, I mean, just a delight to have a supplier that has that information available in a programmatic way.
Yep. Well, it's kind of hacky, but it works. They have a CSV file, and they gave us permission to log into an FTP server with, and the only thing on there is their CSV file. So then our developer pulls that CSV file to a Google Cloud, does gobbledygook with it, and then pushes it to Shopify. So every time there are new releases, every Friday we push those onto our site, and every 3 hours when an item goes out of stock at our supplier, it gets removed from our website.
Oh, that is nice.
Yeah.
So you sync the inventory as well.
Yes. So we went from about just under 4,000 records, new records on the site, to over 10,000 after we built that site, or after we built the app.
And so now people who are Googling that are going to see your ad, those shopping ads. They're going to land on that site potentially because we've cast this very wide net with stuff you could fulfill because that inventory gets updated so quickly.
That's right. Yep.
Oh, I love that approach. It's technical, and it's very dependent on, like, all right, who are you getting the stuff from? What resources do they have available? And certainly some industries are better with this than others. Like, if you're selling car parts in the last several years, they've really caught on to this versus, if you're selling home goods, all right, you might have like 1 in 10 suppliers who can do this for you. So, but like, I'm sure clothing suppliers, a lot of these folks can do it. Anyone in electronics just naturally will have stuff like this. But essentially it's like, they're like, hey, here's a spreadsheet with everything that we know about our catalog updated regularly in one spot. Now it's on you to figure out what to do with that. And you could totally make it work. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And we got very lucky with our supplier, because this is also one of those stories that I want to tell other store owners. Don't rely on one supplier. I don't remember the year exactly, but I want to say 2018. So that supplier that I told you about earlier, that I gave a phone call and signed me up, in, I want to say September, October, I received an email. They were our sole supplier. Those were the guys I'm getting the records from. I get an email from the CEO of the company, who I never ever talked to. I get an email stating, "It's been a pleasure working with you, but as of today, we are shutting down operations, and
Oh, no
all
notice?
all yeah all open orders will be canceled as of tonight." And at that time I still had a full-time, almost full-time job, and I remember grabbing my phone and seeing this email, and I had to do a double take. I'm like, it's not April 1st, is it?
Oh,
And I'm like,
no.
there was a little bit of panic going on because things were ramping up and things were going well, and I was like, now what? Luckily, because I'm always looking for a better deal, I also reached out to other suppliers in the past, just to see if I could get a better price on records. Maybe their inventory is better. You know, maybe I can get a better deal somewhere. But the supplier I was with had the better deal. But that's also probably why they went out of business in hindsight.
No.
um,
Yeah, of course.
yeah. So I reached out to two other suppliers saying that you probably heard, but your competitor went out of business today. Can we do something together? Both were very very aware of the situation, and they were like, "We are stupid busy right now. We can't sign you up." I'm like,
Oh,
"But
no.
I need records." So I'm like, I can't just pull the plug. So one of them I was hounding. I'm like, "I need records. Fix this for me, please." And eventually they said, okay, uh, let me. I was already signed up, so let me see if I can activate the online account for you, and then we should be able to go from there. But it was for them too. Uh, there were three suppliers in the whole country, so one of them shutting down is a third of all the suppliers. So they were, and because my main supplier was also the supplier for most record stores in Canada, though the other two saw a huge influx of new customers showing up. So I understood their problem too. But I
Yeah,
mean,
they were overwhelmed and blindsided as well, just
yeah,
in a different, less horrifying way.
yeah, yeah. And so I was very open with my customers right from the get go. I sent an email out to everybody like, look, this is a situation. I just got this email. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but keep your order. We'll make sure that this is going to work out. I'll fulfill whatever I can from the inventory that we have or what I can get from another supplier. If the price changes, I'll eat that difference. It's not your fault. There were a few people that canceled because they were not too sure what was going on. Of course, I mean,
Yeah, you're going to lose some,
that
but
happens. Yeah, exactly. But most of them were very appreciative of the the openness about the whole situation. So they kept their order. They had to wait a little longer, but eventually they got their order. And that's actually the supplier I'm with now. So that supplier gave us the ability to log into an FTP and gave us the CSV file, etc.
so you were able, ultimately it turned out to be a blessing in disguise, even if it would have, there would have been sleepless nights, I'm sure, when that happened.
Yeah, because and this is the thing, I had a full-time job at the time, so it wasn't a complete panic. It was a situation where it's like, okay, if I need to refund all of these orders, I can make that work, and if I have to shut down, so be it. Um, so sleepless nights, maybe not, because I had that job as a backup, but that's not what I wanted to do. The job was means to an end, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
No, I think a lot of people
and
can relate to that.
yeah, and then the same situation was when COVID hit. what was it, April 2020.
March
Everybody
2020
got
was horrifying.
yeah, everybody got the notification that all businesses have to be shut down right now, and that's literally the moment where I was like, okay, that's it. I don't see any way out of this. I need to pull the plug. That's the end of the business. And the next morning, I read that our province had a bit of a leniency towards what was going on. So they said all businesses need to shut down unless they are deemed, what's the word? Essential?
Essential was the other word they would use.
Yeah. So
It turns out essential is like so wide you could drive a truck through it.
Right. But it was either an essential business, a home-based business, or an online business. I'm like, well, not really essential because it's a luxury item, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So it still is a home-based business, and it's an online business, so I could stay open. And that's when things really started booming for us because all the brick and mortar stores had to shut down, which means record collectors are a rare breed, but they still want their records. And everybody was home, so everybody wanted more records. And the only real option next to the big box retailer was Funky Moose Records. So 2021 were very good years for us. And then, of course, after the pandemic slowed down, all the brick and mortar stores opened up. So now we see a little bit of a slowdown in sales, but we kind of mitigate that with the inventory synchronization.
What was I going to say? Okay, coming to the end of our time together, I want your advice for newbies, for people just starting out. What's the thing that you would advise someone? Hey, do this to make sure your store stands out, or do this to make sure you get that early sales and success.
Oh, that's a tough question because there are so many things you can do wrong. But what I would do, what I didn't do right the first time, and I learned from, is that I didn't really have a good overview of the money that I was spending versus the money that was coming in. So I was breaking even and losing money for the first 2 years. And that was all due to the fact I had a full-time job, so I was really paying attention. But it was like, now in hindsight, I could have done better. I spent too much on things that I shouldn't have spent money on in hindsight. But yeah, watch your cash flow, because if your cash flow goes away, your business is going to be struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And where can we find more about you?
Well, the store itself is funkymooserecords.ca or .com, depending on where you are. You can also check out funkymooseDigital.ca. That's my digital marketing website. And if you want to look me up on Instagram, it's mark.poppen. That's mark.poppen. You can also find Funky Moose Audio. That's the incorporated name. Funky Moose Audio on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you go social.
Very good. Well, thank you, Mark, so much. I enjoyed this. And all right, what's on your turntable right now?
Right now, Queen. It's yeah, I don't know which one. I see it's a Queen album.
There's no wrong choice.
No.
With Queen. For us,
exactly.
I believe my wife has had the Barbie soundtrack, which there's 2 versions of it. She has the pink one. I don't know the difference. I'm told. And I'm pretty sure that's been just going on loop for the last 4 weeks.
Great.
She loves it. Yeah. After a while, I'm like, maybe let's do something else. You know what? Never mind. It's not my room. All right, Mark Poppins, Funky Moose Records. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kurt.